Hello, hello. How's it going, everybody? Continuing our work with the template that we are in the process of building. A reminder, I guess. The objective that we're trying to hit here is a template that you can that allows you to quickly spin up a system tray app. So that would be something that is expected to be running in the background, and you can bring to the front via shortcut or clicking on the system tray, with intent to kind of give you ongoing context of whatever thing you want to implement. I've got a potential one or two use cases for it myself. But what we've done is on a handful of streams now, we've gone through and implemented the features that we're shooting to ship in both JavaScript and Rust, sort of the two extremes. And this is done with version 2, the beta at the moment, because in V2 now these APIs exist in both JavaScript and Rust. Before they were more so just implemented on the Rust side of things. Let's hope I keep my voice through this. So today, I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of polish, because possibly next week what I want to do is actually take and use this template and see how it works when we're actually implementing a specific project. Let me go ahead and flip over here. I've opened up a few issues. Last stream we looked at a couple pieces. We looked at a potential API additions, so things or plugins implemented within our template that would make sense to fit this use case. And I've gone ahead and opened up some issues. So if anybody is interested in helping out and picking those up, feel free to mention in the issue. And then we also had a couple snippet ideas. I think so, something in the vein of like wiring up events or commands, or doing something with like the tray icons, I think is something that we're going to look at doing first as far as snippets go. What I think is going to happen though is that once I clone this repo or whatever verbiage, what does GitHub say? Use this template. Whenever we end up using this template, the project that I end up using it with, I think we're going to run into these pieces where dealing with the tray icons and maybe not so much events and commands, but the I guess basically these big four are going to be the ones that we end up running into that don't necessarily make sense as part of the actual template, but might make sense as snippets. So I think as we implement it there, we'll like copy and paste it into the snippets folder here, which at the time being is pretty empty. So what I want to do today is, well, we might end up adding some of these notes and readmes, but what I want to do is do a little bit of documentation since we don't have much going on right now, but also make sure that if we go ahead and copy this for a project next week, we're not going to like run into any like big hurdles that we need to, or big obstacles that we need to climb. And I think I'm going to end up doing it with the JavaScript. So we'll work with the JavaScript and put a little polish in the JavaScript side of things, and then we can come back later and work with the Rust side of things. Let's go ahead and open the VS Code. What is this complaining about? Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess first we can look at the README. This README, I think, is going to be more of introducing the template, and then within each, because the expectation kind of is that you clone this template, pick Rust or JavaScript, and like lift it up to the root. So I would expect somebody to like delete this root README, so we can put a README within the JavaScript folder that sort of points to the places or the points where you'd end up hooking in or wanting to write your own code. So maybe we do something. Say like background and development. And full of YouTube streams. I think we'll end up moving this below. So the like what and why and how would end up being above this. So this is going to be more of like the contributing section, or a very simple version of a contributing section, because we could do like a contributing.md, but we're probably not at that point yet. Interested in helping out, check out the issues for planned work and the we'll just leave it at planned work. So then we're gonna do like a what and why. Maybe I don't give this section a header. Looking to create a Tauri app that is accessible. Weird. I'm getting I saw this last time, that the audio stream's current bitrate is lower than the recommended amount. Man, I feel like computer stuff has just not been my friend these past few weeks. I'm big shrug. I'm like half. I feel like half my stuff is not working right now, which is really frustrating. And we kept having like network card issues. Like my internet is working fine, but then the network just, like, my computer just stops sending upload, and frustrating is definitely one of the words I would describe it as. So I don't know. Maybe it's fine. It says it's fine. It says excellent connection, and then it gives this recommendation. It's like, okay, well. So looking to create a Tauri app that runs in the background and is accessible through the or keyboard shortcut, I guess. Use this template as a way to jump start creating your app. Actually, that reminds me. I guess these are very much specifically tied to a version. It would be npm is not great about making those like so here we have a cargo lock file. We can do like a cargo upgrade, and we have specifically opted into beta, which is generically just those string of like beta.1, beta.2, beta.3. Just give us the latest of the betas. It doesn't change because we have a lock file and we've committed the lock file. So if somebody's using this template, it will work because what we have in the repo should be working. That kind of means that we end up having to do like manual upgrades at the moment, which I think is probably fine. I would rather in the choosing of, should we remove the lock file and let it update itself versus keep a lock file and know or feel confident that it's going to work in its current state. I think I would prefer that option. Because we can always like do the upgrades and as they come through, and then especially as we're in beta, fix anything that could or has potentially broken in those upgrades. Maybe once we go stable, we can be a little bit more loose about it, where we don't include a lock file. But it's still not a great experience here because depending on the package manager you use, you end up specifying like a specific version. You have a range, so it mostly should pick the highest of those versions, but it's not as clean. It doesn't feel as clean. So at the moment, we'll keep lock files, and maybe we end up. I think we have to manually just do upgrades at the moment. So looking to create a Tauri app that runs in the background and is accessible through the system tray keyword, use this template as a way to jumpstart creating your app. So that's sort of like the what and why. And maybe we go, it implements a few specific features that we might expect this use case to require. And then we'll go ahead and bullet point these. They're going to be so system tray integration, global shortcut to open the app. Let's say system tray integration with mini pop-up window. Is that the mini pop-up? Mini pop-up? Sure. And notification integration ready to handle ready to handle native toasts. Does that make sense? So I think those are probably the big three. And So that's I think that kind of covers like the what and the why, and then we want to get into a little bit of the um, like the folder layout and how you would go about using it. So maybe we'll say like a getting started. GitHub. This is marked as a template in GitHub to allow one to easily clone this into a new repo. Does that make sense? I'm thinking of like that button. So we could say like click, use this template to get started. And I'm getting that notification again. What is the deal? I swear. I mean, it seems like it's fine, like it's operating fine, but I'm not sure. Let me know if there's any like noticeable audio issues in the comments, because I definitely need to follow up on that if there is. But there's very little information to go off of, and it seems fine from my end. Okay, so this is marked as a template in GitHub to allow one to easily clone this into a new repo. Click use this template to get started. Once the repository has 3 main folders. JavaScript, Rust, and snippets. With the new features in V2 of Tauri, these APIs are accessible through either JavaScript or Rust. I guess let's do some capitalization because it's referring to the actual language. We have implemented the template at these 2 extremes. Feel free to choose whichever fits your preference, and pull code from the other to create a mix as needed. So it's sort of a mix and match. I guess I could say that. Mix and match. Mix and match between these 2 implementations to find your best implementation? No. Mix and match between these 2 implementations to find your to find the best fit for your project. So we want to say something about the implementations between JavaScript and Rust are similar, but the Rust implementations tend to be set within the so we want to kind of mention that the Rust implementation is more in the setup or like build time type things, whereas the JavaScript is a little bit more runtime. So it gives you different types of flexibility depending on your use case. Set within the Tauri builder. Go away. The implementations between JavaScript and Rust are similar, but the Rust implementations, no. The Rust implementations tend to be set within the Tauri builder, which leads to the implementations being more build time oriented. Conversely, also, like, do I have a spell checker in here? Is that spelled right? I don't remember if I've got a spell checker in here. We are going to check that. That does not look right. Okay, maybe I did spell it right. Let's just like take out an E. Do I have a spell checker in here? Doesn't seem like it. Okay. We'll have to keep that in mind. Conversely, the JavaScript implementation tends towards runtime. Tend towards runtime setup. Conversely, conversely, the JavaScript implement tend towards runtime. Each of these have both preference and possible use case considerations. Hence, the value of mix and matching. Okay. I think that's probably pretty good. So we've got sort of the what and why, like what is this thing? I guess if you're first landing in this, you might not know what a Tauri app is. So let's go ahead and just like link, I guess link the docs. Probably just link to the beta docs. So we have a link to Tauri. We note what it is, what this is doing, and like what the intent of it is. So why would you use this? You're using it as a way to jumpstart creating an app that meets this specific use case. And these are like the high level features that use case is expected to use. And then this is getting started, sort of explaining these two this is explaining like that folder structure, why we have a JavaScript implementation, why we have a REST implementation. Oh, and then we need to mention the snippets. The snippets folder has example implementations for features that may how do we explain that? We talked about in a previous stream, like there's sort of this Venn diagram where you have a system tray app. The likelihood of one wanting to make a system tray app and use these features, there's a lot of overlap there. Snippets, we're expecting the snippets to have less. So like in the idea of a Venn diagram, we're more like this, whereas those like top level features are more like this. So the snippets folder has example implementations for features that you may find useful, but were not expected to be widely applicable. I guess that's probably. They were not expected to be widely applicable. As such, we include copy and paste code, but don't include it directly in the main templates. Okay. Background and development. Most of this we originally did on stream. And I think that's probably it. I don't want to like call out any specific issues because then I need to make sure this README continues to stay up to date. And I'd imagine that anybody familiar with GitHub that would want to contribute is going to, probably go over to the tags and look at the tags or whatnot. So I think from there, let's check out the JavaScript side of things. We have dependencies and scripts. We're probably going to want to mention a quick way to, like, how do you start up the dev server? How do you like start running with this? So let's go ahead and do a readme.md here. Tauri system tray app. We're not going to specifically say with JavaScript because by the time somebody would copy and paste it, they would know that it is JavaScript. We are going to, I guess, link this again. So the intent of linking that is when somebody copies this, uses this JavaScript folder, has this README will be in the root. So anybody else that would see them having done this or copied it over would like see this link. So if anybody else is interested in following up with Tauri, they will have that conveniently there. We're going to add a background as well. No. I was going to say we can add a background that links back to this repo. So if somebody wanted to make their own template, but if they're clicking use, if they're clicking like use this template, I think it does like a fork and it actually links back to this repo. So they would see that it was like forked or created based off of this. but maybe it's still useful if somebody doesn't do that. Yeah. I guess. Sure. We'll link back. This was created based off of the Tauri system tray app template. That's probably fine. We'll say development. So we want to mention, I'm trying to think of like what verbiage we would use for this project is created with, we'll say Node and npm. Guess we do that. Run an npm install to get started. And make certain you have the Tauri prerequisites installed. And then here we can link to this page. Because if somebody is looking at this or cloning it for the first time, they need to make sure that they have Rust. Like that's high level. They at least have to have that. Some of this other stuff like Android and iOS, we're not really meeting that use case, so they wouldn't actually need that installed. But there are a couple potential system dependencies depending on what operating system you're using. So we'll go ahead and link that. To run the Tauri app in development mode, use it'll be npm run Tauri dev, I believe, right? npm run Tauri dev. So Tauri dev. And that'll get you going. Do we... Instead of saying development, let's actually call this getting started. And then I think we add a separate like development section, in which case we point to specific places in the code to start adding your customizations. Okay. I need a drink. I'm going to be right back, and we're going to pick it up right here. And then I think we're going to start looking at the actual code and see if there's anything we need to modify to make sure that we're going to meet the needs at least of this like first project that we're going to start on the stream, and anybody else that would be cloning this. But be right back. All right. Whoop. I suppose I can go right to the display. Um. Okay. So development. Let's just keep that sort of like to do. I guess I can literally say to do here. We'll keep that to do there, and let's check out what we have in our package here. We do have a license there. We don't have any licenses elsewhere. I'm going to leave that one there. I'm going to actually put another one within Rust. And I want to put one at the root. Just because it's going to be very dependent on like how you're copying it and what you're leaving. And also I want... Right now it doesn't say anything about a license here, which I would like. And I guess while we're specifically looking at that, let's update this description here. Not topics, description. We don't. I guess we could leave the link in there. Maybe the link works. We don't need deployments or packages. Releases might make sense. Tauri? Sure. Let's try that. Okay, yeah, it doesn't like that. Which is fine. Oh. Bump up my mic here. There we go. Okay. So let's look at the code. We, through a handful of streams, have worked through this and implemented each of these features. If you're interested in any of that, link to the playlist, or you can just go to, click the little icon thing down there that takes you to the channel, and you can see all of them there. We've got to be at like 6 or 8 now or something like that, eh? So do we keep strict mode? I'm probably gonna end up leaving a bunch of this like CSS in here and the favicon. We're gonna need to deal with the favicon and the icons in general. I'm gonna actually leave that, I think, until we clone and start off a project, because I think we're gonna have to like go through the process of dealing with the icons before it's gonna make sense how to make that process easier. At least in the context of this template. So I think we'll probably just leave these bits as is. Context. So we do need to explain the app API. Let's go ahead and do that right now, actually. The source folder includes 2 main folders: app, API, and view. The app API has implemented the Tauri APIs as abstracted pieces to improve the ability to shift and move their like how they're tied into the code, their life cycle and startup hook as required. So right now it's just React. Theoretically, we could do more than just React, but I don't think I want to. I think we're going to just focus on like the fact that we have it implemented in React. The view includes the main React code. I guess it's literally not the main though. View layer, I guess. Because that's kind of the intent of that, like the view layer. So these I'm less. I've got less of a specific idea how we want to call these out. I mean, index.css. I'm actually going to switch this to say main. Do we have a main in here as well? No. Yeah, I think I'm going to switch this to main. Just to make it clear that those go together. The favicon, again, TBD, I believe, is going to be the best way to deal with it. Context is sort of applicable to both, which is why I think I'm okay leaving it at the root. But to mention that, we want to say the view includes the main React layer. The Tauri APIs return hooks and or use React context. The Tauri APIs return hooks and or use React context to enable use within the view layers. We'll say C context.ts. I guess that's technically like source context TS. That's probably going to be the best way to say it. And I suppose while we're doing that, we'll do this as well. So from there, I think we also note the source Tauri folder implements the minimal required Tauri builder Rust code and plugin. It's like plugin hooks, I guess. Plugin. I guess and plugin initialization is probably the best way to say that. That's not right. I used to have a spell checker. That's the word I was looking for. I used to have a spell checker in here. I don't know what happened to that plugin. Maybe I turned it off at some point because it was not being helpful, and probably should turn it back on. where to next? So we've got kind of this like top level. These are the apps. I think maybe we include this here. And now what we're going to be talking about is specifically within the view or the app API. Is there anything that we want to note in setup notifications or adjust? So right now we have, we're doing some work to like check permission is granted, and then we set up like this return API. We have a default. And we have a note here, and this is, I think, more for the user. Like if they would want to implement, we talked about this a few streams back when we did the notification implementation. But the idea of notifications sort of depending on context. If the app is minimized, an operating system level notification would make sense. But if you have the app open and you're looking at it, it almost makes sense to have that notification within the main app layer rather than in an OS notification on the side. That's what this is getting at. We could use a framework library or custom code to render this notification in the DOM and use a signal to determine where to send it. So basically, if we're focused, send it within the main DOM. I don't think there's anything that we need to actually like note or point to because we have that note here. Shortcuts. Do we need to do anything? I don't know that there's anything we specifically need to do here. It's registering a shortcut with intent to do a specific thing. Pop the thing up and show it to us. We do still potentially want to come back to that shortcut and the one we're setting as a default. I don't know if that's going to be a great default. We can come back to that though, I think, when we create our app project off of it. The setup tray though, this is something I kind of wanted to think about. There is, well, first of all, like the event type changed, which is interesting, and that TypeScript doesn't seem correct. We might want to, that might be fixed like once we update the versions. So I'm going to continue to ignore it for right now. But still looking at the event nice. We have a hook here. Here, let's actually add a comment to this. The mini pop-up window should automatically hide once you stop giving it focus. Okay. So then we got a right click or a basically any other click. So theoretically, like you could do like a what is there, like there's like a click 3, click 4, click 5. So we show the window with specific positioning. This is where that positioner plugin could come into play. And when we pop it up, we're specifically giving it focus so that when you stop giving it focus, it'll hide it. If we don't do this, you wouldn't necessarily give it focus right away, and you could click the button to get it to pop up and then go do something else, and it's just going to sit there because you've never actually given it focus to then remove focus. This year, though, this bit, I think is the thing that we want to potentially think about. We're doing some little pieces with tray here, and then also, I believe, in here we're handling menu add item. I think that might be the last bit that we want to like think about. So if we have a tooltip, we're setting the tooltip, that's fine. The set icon, again, we're going to come back to that once we spin up this project. We create the menu, set that menu item. Do we do any? I guess we specifically don't do anything with menu items here, which I think I'm actually okay with. This is specifically about spinning it up and getting it like in a place where it's returned and you can use this and add your own menu items as you see fit. Yeah, I see. And we're assigning this whole action, which is this, to that icon. Got it. Okay. That, I think I'm actually okay with that. Let's check out here. So we're rendering the root and app. App is the like a root. Or the root. Main is the root. So in app, this is the thing that I mean, we ended up using use effect. Not thrilled with putting that in there, but we need to wait both of these. We could potentially do stuff with like suspense and whatnot, and that probably is going to be the better thing to switch to. But I think we're gonna make that better once we switch to working on the project. Or if somebody else wants to, feel free to come in and use effect things. I'm happy to support that. Hey, Chris, good to see you. Good to see you. So we have at the root of this, we've got the trade and the notifications, and again we get these. We're setting the state here so as to then put it in the provider, so that anywhere within your app you're able to send a notification or add menu items. So I think this is probably. I think this is probably sufficient, other than like dealing with the use effect. We might come back to this and see if we can remove that. We'll see how much time we have. I've got a bit of a hard stop today. In the home though, we have a couple buttons that we were using to test. Fire off the notification. This is actually the default notification. I think I'm actually going to say rather than using the default, because I think it is highly unlikely that somebody's going to use the default just to send a random notification. I think we actually put something in here so they can see it being used. Notification from Tauri. And then body. Whoop. This is a notification from Tauri. I think that's probably going to be the way to go. And we have it wired up to where you can pass in anything supported by this send method. So even if you end up not using TypeScript, I guess we have to use TypeScript to get some of this because we specifically have this typed. But if you are using TypeScript, your IDE ends up helping out with the rest of the values there if you opt to use them. And this is the other bit that I just wanted to take a peek at. We have a button to add a tray menu item. The use case for that is probably nil. Why would somebody want to use this? So I think I want to do a better example here. Having a button to test it is handy. But why would you add a tray menu item here off of a button click? So there's a few pieces that the item needs. What else is in here? Accelerator, and specify an accelerator. Whether the new menu item is enabled or not. Okay. And it's got text ID and action. So I don't think this use case makes sense. Where would we want somebody to configure their menu items? Probably on like first load, right? I don't know that I want to tie it specifically into the tray setup, but I think potentially at the app root might make sense. So this is setting up the tray and then global shortcuts. I think we move some of this code here and potentially comment it out. I'm dynamically set an ID. Move some of this code here and comment it out so as to like meet the expected use case a little bit more. I think I would expect somebody to come in here and just like add a handful of menu items that they would intend to use. But we can't embed it into the initial state because we need to set up the tray first. So I suppose we could potentially put it into the home. Let's see real quick if we can remove a little bit of this use effect here, because I think that's part of what is making this feel awkward. So within React, there's do we do suspense for this? Suspense takes a component and a fallback. And part of that is until its children have finished loading. So we can put it all into one section. So the component needs to, when a component suspends, I guess what if we split this all out into a hook? What if we've got two hooks? This technically is like it's firing off. This is firing off on first mount. It is setting up the tray on first mount. We could pull it out to a separate hook. And that might make this a little bit clearer. Do we... I guess it doesn't really make sense to tie this to suspense because it's not part of... Like, these are more app APIs. It doesn't make sense to suspend loading the front end. When, like it's two different contexts. Why suspend loading the front end when we're doing work to do like load app state? I don't know that makes sense. So I guess maybe like splitting these out as separate hooks is probably going to be the best. And as such, can we use one of these other base level hooks to help us out with this async part of it? At the top level, I can want to get a deferred version of that value. So there's some like re-rendering happening because of this. If we use deferred value, defer updating a part of the UI. So basically, we don't update it because we just use the default. Part of this too is the like we're passing this value to the context. Is use deferred value. So we give it a value and an initial value, which is similar to like use state. So their example here is we're defining a query and then we're doing use deferred value on that query. Oh, interesting. Okay. Does that make sense here? I haven't actually used deferred value. Use callback doesn't make sense. Use context is kind of what we're already doing. Cache the result of a calculation between re-renders. I mean, in some ways, this use memo is something we're going to end up wanting to cache, I would imagine. Because we don't want, like, we don't want some of this stuff to, like, continually rerun. There's no point in, like, recalculating this. Use optimistic. It's kind of like we want to use async. I think I'm going to pull these out in a separate hook. And can we... Does it make sense to do memoize them in some way? So the work we're doing here, we're setting up a tray and then setting that state. And we are... I guess this is not something that's really memoizable. Memoizable. We're gonna put this out into a separate doc. So app API, I think I kind of want to keep that. I think I kind of want to keep that more purely Tauri API implementation. So if we do a hooks slash setup, and then our custom hook ends up being basically this piece, of which we can say function use Tauri, maybe just use Tauri. Mixing my syntax here. Import React use effect from React. Use state. What else are we missing? All of this. Remove it from here. It cleans this up a little bit, which is nice. We'll do an export, and so in our notifications, we don't, well, I guess we are doing a set notifications, okay. And we need a tray and a notifications. So we can do a return tray notifications. And then here we can say const Tauri APIs equals use Tauri. And it should be this. So that makes it a little bit cleaner. And then we can, the use effect, still not a huge fan of that, but we can come back to and clean that up a little bit in the future. But then what we can do here is, let's say const menu items equals an array. And then our expectation here is we can do something like this, where a menu item is going to have menu item is going to have text. It's going to have an ID, menu ID, and it's going to have an action. And here I'm actually just going to grab this piece because we can use that directly. Oh, we can't this. we'll do something like that. In which case we can then say use Tauri takes these menu items. This is going to be an array of do an array of menu items, and this should be we'll say type menu item content, I guess. Is there, do we get any types from this? Menu item options. Menu item options is great. That's exactly what we need. So we're going to make this an array of menu item options so that somebody could pass in. They can pass in menu items. And then we'll end up using them directly. So we have an async function, which is firing off setting the tray, initial tray. I think we can then just go directly from here and say dot append we can do a menu for const menu item menu items. We can do in initial tray dot append and menu item. There we go. So now we pass in a basically like default menu items that'll be rendered. And then we can take out all of this because I don't think it makes sense in the context of don't think it makes sense in the context of like our use cases here. So now somebody would come in, they would edit like these top level menu items. They would get basically these built-in menu items to start from. And then if they need to embed any like specific context or anything when they're firing off this action in a menu item, it's also available in the context. System tray context, in which case you are able to anywhere within your code create a new menu item. So do we try to show that in some way? I don't. I think this is going to be. I think this is going to cover a good chunk of the cases. And I think we do something like that. And we'll say as menu item options this, so it doesn't complain. we won't technically need that type there. Like, large amount of the cases, the bundler is just going to handle that for us. But I kind of like the explicitness of mentioning that that's a type. Because it kind of makes it easy. If you want to like strip things out and go pure JavaScript, no TypeScript, that makes it a little bit clearer. All right. I think this feels pretty good. Somebody could come in and do menu items, and then they get something to work with. We're getting to the end of my available time, but let's give this a quick run. Make sure that we didn't break anything in the process. And I can add in this many items just to make sure that that works, and that we've got that wired up correctly. While that's running, let's just make a note. The source folder includes 2 main folders. We've got hooks. Returns API hooks. Let's say the Tauri app API functions return API hooks and or use React context to enable use within the view layers. And then we want to say for in to modify the system tray menu items, see the initial array of items in source slash view slash app. To modify, to send notifications, see the example in source view home.tsx, which fires a notification on button click. And this is sort of like pointing back to this. We've got notifications, we've got system tray, and then the global shortcut is that last bit. To modify the global shortcut, it is, I mean, it's probably easiest to modify directly in the setup shortcuts. We're not actually exposing it at all. So maybe we see that the global shortcuts are not directly exposed, but they're not exposed through the React context, but can be modified directly in source slash app API slash setup shortcuts.ts. There we go. I think that kind of covers all of our situations here. So now we have our app. It is started. If we click, we get this notifications, which I did end up fixing. Woohoo. We click away, it hides. We don't have any menu items though. So if we go back to this and we save that, we get a hot reload, which ends up spinning up a whole separate one, which is kind of interesting. But if you right click, you see the item. And if we click that, we don't see anything in here because it's actually sending it a console log. So it would be within this where we would see it. I think that covers everything that we would potentially want for this base, including some documentation. Again, we do want to come back and make this a little bit easier, at least to cover off and sort of polish up the last of the JavaScript implementation. But I think we spin up a project, we start to use it, feel it out, and see what it would look like to make these bits easier. In which case, maybe that becomes a snippet. We've kind of extracted out the menu items. We may have less of a use case for this. But the snippet piece that would potentially make sense, we'll take a look at that real quick before we call it a day here. But if we look at where do we put the core APIs? References, API, tray icon. Okay, so that we actually need to go look at menu. There's menu items, predefined menu item, which we don't have much documentation on, and some menu. I think all of those could end up being snippets, either something we can do right as snippets and put in our template, but also like filling this out a little bit more would be nice. And you have menus and submenus. I think we keep this API sort of top level, drop in a bunch of menu items and go from there. But if you want to have something a little bit more involved, I think that does make sense to become a snippet. I suspect in most cases it's going to be like a right click and exit. That's going to be the bulk of the use cases. Or a restart. Here we go. Predefined menu item options. Object. What's object? I wonder what object is used for. But separator, copy, cut, paste, select all. Some of these are going to be a little bit less applicable to our case. So menu item is used within the tray. But I think you can also set up a menu, like when you're right clicking in the actual app, you can have some of these like OS level menu items. Hide others, show all, close window. Yeah, I think the services is kind of interesting. I'm curious what that is. Hey John, good to see you. Good to see you. So I don't think we actually crossed this off the list. These, I think, are going to be the snippets that make sense still. Grabbing a screenshot, that's sort of separate from what we've talked about. File system snippets, also sort of separate. Events and commands, we don't have that anywhere within the template. So I think it would make sense to have something we could copy and paste. It does also come with create Tauri app. So there's likely precedence there to enable that easily. The icons, we're going to spit up a new project and see what comes about that, and see if we can have a snippet or in some way make that process easier. And including icons within the menu, because so like right now we only have it's just text. You can put an icon there, and then this like submenu piece, separators and submenu pieces, because we can do a menu item as a separator. That's not going to work with our like high level API here, because all we're doing is in the hook, we're looping over and creating menu items. Separator is a predefined menu item. A little bit different use case, but I don't think it makes sense to like put that in the main template. I think that does make sense to keep it as a snippet. So, right at the end of the stream here, John. But what we've looked at is we added a little bit of polish, we added a little bit of documentation to the template. Make it easier, make it clear for somebody to clone this and get going. And we pulled out some of our React context functions, React context creating functions into a separate hook, and cleaned up the menu items API, or the use of it in our template, because we had this like you click a button and it creates a new menu item, which worked for a demo but doesn't really make sense as something that is within a template, because it's not a very strong use case. But basically an easy way to spin up menu items within this template. So I'll open up this in a PR. We can ship this off. I think potentially next week we clone this and start a little bit of a new project using this template and see if we can spin it up, and maybe in the process create a couple of these snippets which we can bring back in. This I think pretty well covers what we might want to see in JavaScript, pending a few issues. If anybody is interested in tackling some of these, we do still need to come back to Rust though. There's pretty much the same type of work we would end up doing. There might also be a little bit of abstracting we can do with the notifications, which we didn't do when we were digging into Leptos a couple of weeks back. But I think we're sort of nearing the end of like this template being a mainstream topic, and I hope y'all have enjoyed going through creating this and get some use out of it too. I would love to hear what you're making. Feel free to leave it in the comments, or discussions, I guess, would probably be a good place to kind of also note or chat about what you're doing. Quantum Leap event, nice name. Nice session. Would be cool in the future to see use case with headless browser, maybe Rust Chrome headless to scrape similar to Puppeteer. Ooh, all right, would be. So headless browser, are you thinking like testing, or are you thinking using like a Tauri app as a way to help do scraping? Because there is definitely some personal interest in the testing part of it. So using or somehow starting up, a scraper. That would be generically, you would probably end up using the Tauri app as a way to interact and fire off processes. You could end up doing very similar with a command line. So you could write a command line in which you type the things you want to do. It starts with the processes and runs the work. I think in the same way, a Tauri app would be a way to like kick off and potentially see like status updates or whatnot. I don't know that there's anything specific to Tauri, though that would make sense to go through that, if that makes sense. Because mostly what you're doing is just kicking off a generic process from the point of view of like exploring Tauri app use cases. You're click a button, this process fires off and starts doing its thing, and it's communicating and checking with that would be the only interesting bit specific to like how Tauri could help out in my mind. Because that's a involved use case. Does that make sense? Not necessarily something we can directly spin up on stream, and web scraping is a little bit of a gray area as far as the type of use cases you could use it for. So hey, nice. You do have a tray app you need if time permits. That's kind of the idea of this. The template is, I think I've always been interested in tray apps as a use case with Tauri. I've never had the time to be like, I want to do the thing, because there's all these like base level pieces that I needed to like get in place before I could actually like do the thing. It doesn't really make sense as a guide or anything within Tauri. It doesn't make sense as a create Tauri app generally, because it's a very specific use case with a handful of Tauri APIs. If we put, I would like to put a bunch of documentation and push it upstream into the main Tauri docs about these topics, but you still have to like piece it all together and copy and paste a whole bunch of stuff to get it all working. So just having something you can copy and build the thing that you want to build on with all these APIs ready in place, I think that's going to be helpful, because I definitely want to enable this use case because I have personal interest in it, and I'm also interested to see what y'all build and I can use. We are a little bit more targeting I'm making this for my own personal use case. I'm going to build it and run it locally kind of situation, because we don't have any updater stuff wired in. But the updater pieces start to get into sort of context that the user needs to have. So in some ways, if you do want to end up publishing it, you use this template as a way to start out and then publish it. Implementing the updater stuff directly, I think, is probably gonna make the most sense anyways. So yeah, give it a clone, and at least after I push up these couple of changes, give it a clone, and love to hear what you end up coming up with, John. That's where I gotta call it though. We got a meeting to go to. In the U.S., we had Memorial Day, so many folks had Monday off, which meant all meetings got moved to today. Fun. I think we'll end up doing the cloning this and starting up a project off of this template next week. Pretty certain, but a little bit of TBD in there. So that'll be next Tuesday. So I guess we'll see you then. Have a great rest of your week and a good weekend. And if you're anything like it's been in our household, just constant sickness. So if that's your situation, you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. It seems to be everybody that has kids, the at least in my area, the past handful of weeks. Feel better. Have a good great rest of your week. See you next Tuesday. Bye.